During a storm, she saved a bleeding snowstorm. What she discovered changed everything forever. Emily gripped the steering wheel as she navigated through the raging snowstorm, the blinding white swirling around her like a vortex of chaos. Her heart raced. Each mile felt like an eternity. Each glance at the clock reminded her of Lucy, waiting at home for her mother. The demands of her job as a nurse at the local hospital had stretched her thin, and today was particularly brutal, filled with sick patients and frantic calls. With every fiber of her being, she wanted to be there for Lucy, to shield her from the bitter cold and keep her safe. Yet here she was, caught in a struggle no mother should endure. As she made her way down the deserted road, a flicker caught her eye. It was fleeting, just a shadow against the white canvas of snow, but it sent a jolt of instinct throughout her body. She pulled over, adrenaline pumping, her breath quickening with anticipation and dread. What if it was too late? The sight that confronted her chilled her to the bone. A young man lay crumpled at the side of the road, blood trickling down his temple. He wore torn jeans that spoke of a life in disarray, his face bruised and vulnerable. "Help!" he gasped, glancing at her through bleary eyes. It was an automatic response, her training taking over. As she coaxed him into her car, the heat from the engine a stark contrast to the freezing night. A sense of dread coiled in her stomach. Lucy was alone at home, the darkness pressing against the windows. She should have been on her way back, reading them both a bedtime story. Instead, she chose to help a stranger. In the flickering light inside her living room, Emily cleaned the man's wounds, their eyes locking intermittently, making the air between them thick with unspoken questions. Jake's story unfolded. He was adrift, ensnared by bad decisions. He spoke of family betrayal, lost dreams, a life teetering on the edge of ruin. She felt empathy dragging her in, his words igniting a flicker of hope in her weary heart. Yet the worry for Lucy stung harsher, a bitter reminder of her unyielding responsibilities. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As Emily rifled through the drawer for a first aid kit, her fingers brushed against an old family photograph crammed into the corner. It was frayed, but she recognized the smile of her grandfather, an image she often turned to for solace. Shock pulsed through her when she saw Jake's resemblance to someone in the picture, severed ties of another life colliding with her current reality. This stranger's lineage whispered tales of lost opportunities, echoing her own family's buried history. The unfairness of the universe tightened around her throat. Was this fate, or simply a cruel twist? The layers of loyalty, justice, and forgiveness spiraled in her mind like the snowstorm outside. With Lucy's laughter pressing at the edges of her thoughts, Emily faced a turmoil of feelings. Trusting Jake could unravel everything she had built for her daughter. Would her helping him mean sacrificing the integrity her family fought for? The clock ticked away, time slipping through her fingers as the tempest outside roared louder, amplifying her doubts. Emily's heart was heavy with dilemma as she stood rooted in uncertainty, the storm growing fiercer around them. Choices loomed large, and she was a single mother on the precipice of a choice that could change everything forever. In this tumultuous night, an emotional explosion was waiting to erupt, threatening to bind her to a past she never wanted to revisit. Would this storm usher in healing or destruction? Emily's pulse thrummed in her ears, drowning out the biting wind that whistled through the gaps in her home. She focused on the task before her, wrapping Jake's head with sterile gauze as he sat on her couch, the faint glow of the lamp illuminating the shadows on his face. His pale complexion, fraught with pain and confusion, mirrored a disarray she recognized too well, echoing the turmoil lying dormant within her. As she secured the bandage, she fought the rising tide of anxiety gripping her chest. Emily's mind darted to Lucy, picturing her small frame curled up in their bed, clutching a stuffed animal, oblivious to the chaos swirling outside. Would she understand her mother's choice, or would this moment fracture the fragile world they had built together? Trust was difficult to preserve under such pressing circumstances. Jake winced as she fastened the last bit of binding. "Thanks," he murmured, his voice strained but sincere. His gaze was a mix of gratitude and vulnerability, and Emily felt her empathy expanding like a balloon, and just as fragile.
Each time she peered into his eyes, a surge of instinct warned her that aiding him could come at a high cost. Yet there was something in his raw honesty that beckoned her. "Why were you out there?" Emily asked, the question slipping out before she could hold it back. She needed to understand, to uncover what burden this stranger carried. He sighed heavily, a sound filled with so much weight it felt like the room itself quivered. "I lost my way," Jake admitted, his gaze falling to the floor, figuratively and literally. "I've made some choices that led me here."
Emily felt an unexpected resonance with his words. How many times had she felt adrift, navigating a sea of responsibilities while grappling with her own decisions that felt wrong? "We all stray sometimes," she whispered, her thoughts flitting momentarily to her own choices, her nursing career, the years spent battling the inadequacies of being both a mother and a professional. As she started to clean the supplies, Emily realized that helping Jake could catalyze changes she hadn't anticipated. The decision to offer him refuge mirrored risks she faced daily in her work. It questioned her commitment, her values. Vulnerability was stifling, yet here she was, feeling an unfamiliar flicker of courage. A notion stirred inside her, a desire for transformation. Emily wasn't merely a nurse. She was capable of healing, not just physically, but emotionally too. As her heart began to swell with conviction, she could feel the weight of her own past reshaping her perspective on the present. Offering aid to Jake ignited an unexpected spark. It was as if she had started peeling away layers of self-imposed limitations and fears. "How do you mean, lost your way?" she pressed, her curiosity piqued and her spirit ignited. There was a depth in Jake's eyes that suggested he was more than the reckless man he portrayed. His response was a soft-spoken confession. "I thought I could handle it all. Family pressure, failed dreams, but it all spiraled beyond my control. I broke, and I've been running ever since. Tonight, I thought, maybe it's time to stop running." Emily's heart raced. This simple admission pulled at the edges of her resolve, exposing cracks in her own facade of strength. She had been running too, though the path was laden with caring for Lucy and the burdens of her job, running from fears that suffocated her aspirations. As the storm raged on outside, the atmosphere inside the house shifted, charged with shared vulnerability. There was a moment, just a fleeting pulse, when both she and Jake were interconnected by the weight of their choices, by the looming shadows of regret. "Maybe we can help each other," she proposed, her voice firm yet gentle, feeling the swell of courage grow inside her. But even as the words left her mouth, uncertainty loomed like a specter. Would this plunge into uncharted waters pull her under, or could it ultimately be the catalyst for both their rescues? The clock on the wall ticked ominously, reminding her of Lucy waiting in the darkness. As Emily gazed into Jake's eyes, a flicker of determination ignited within her, urging her forward. But would the path she was considering lead to healing, or would it trigger complications she wasn't prepared to face? She would have to decide soon. And then, the doorbell rang, piercing the fragile moment they shared. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Who could it be in this storm? Would they bring answers or chaos to an already fragile situation? The doorbell echoed through the quiet space, a sharp intrusion that sliced through the air and rattled Emily's senses. She could feel the weight of Jake's presence beside her, his vulnerability both comforting and daunting. What if the arrival would fracture this delicate balance they had just begun to explore? "Stay here," she instructed softly, her eyes darting to the door. Emily's heart thrummed like a storm drum in her chest as she approached the entrance. She instinctively rubbed her palms against her teens, a futile attempt to calm her racing thoughts. Peering through the peephole, she was met with an unexpected sight. A neighbor, Mr. Reynolds, his familiar form barely visible against the angry backdrop of storm clouds. With a sigh of relief, she opened the door. "Emily, I was worried about you. The storm is getting severe, and I thought I'd check in," he said, attempting to smile, though the worry etched across his face belied his cheerfulness.
"Thanks, Mr. Reynolds. I appreciate it," she replied, glancing behind her, unsure whether to invite him inside. The unspoken truth loomed in her mind. Would she have to share their situation? Before she could answer her own question, he peered past her. "Is everything all right? It looks like you have company." His eyes flickered with concern as they rested on Jake, who sat tense on the couch, a crumpled figure wrapped in gauze. Her instinct screamed to protect Jake, to shield from judgment, yet she grappled with the urge to be both transparent and guarded. "He's fine, just needed a little help," Emily responded, her voice steadier than she felt. Mr. Reynolds' gaze shifted back to her, probing, and the tension coiled tighter in Emily's chest. "You know I'm always here if you need anything," he offered, sincerity lacing his tone. "Right," she said, a knot forming in her throat. She needed to stay focused, to wrestle control over her fears, for both Jake and herself. Closing the door gently felt like shutting out the world, a temporary reprieve from reality and judgments. Emily turned back to Jake, apprehension mingling with resolve. "We need to come up with a plan," she said, her voice laced with urgency as she took a seat across from him. The small space felt charged, as though every shadow curled around them, bearing witness to their unspoken struggles. Jake leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I don't want to impose on you or Lucy. I've put you in a risky situation." "Risk is a part of life, Jake. I've always known that," Emily stated, feeling the tension in her muscles ease slightly. "But I think we can make a decision together. Live a little dangerously for a change. Is that going to help us both?" His brow furrowed, but a flicker of hope sparked in his eyes. "You're right. Maybe we can confront this together. I don't want to run anymore." Confronting fear side by side felt daunting, but maybe that's what she needed. The echo of his words pressed against her consciousness. No more running.
As they strategized, an idea crystallized. Emily's training taught her how to stabilize a crisis. Maybe she could channel that knowledge to tackle the weight pressing on them emotionally. We could create a safety plan, how to safely handle any surprises. Every step we take would be in our control, she proposed, trying to shape the chaos into manageable pieces. The storm raged outside, rain lashed against the windows. "We need to handle what's right in front of us first," Jake said, uncertainty glazing his tone. "What if someone finds me here?" "Then we'll face it," she declared, determination igniting in her. "I won't let fear dictate our choices anymore." It was a bold statement rooted in self-awareness. "Let's discuss our options then." But as they began planning, another ring from the doorbell cut through their fragile resolve. Emily paused, panic flaring in her chest. Who else could be out there, drawn by the chaos of the night? "Stay quiet," she whispered to Jake, holding her breath as she approached the door again. Would this visitor bring salvation, or plunge them deeper into the tumult of uncertainty? A challenging moment awaited her just beyond the door, one that could shift the course of her intentions yet again. No longer just thoughts swirling in her mind, but real consequences awaiting her choice at the threshold. Could she harness the courage to make the right decision? Emily hesitated, her hand hovering above the doorknob. She felt an undercurrent of fear amplifying her heartbeat. The storm outside competed with the thunder of her thoughts, filling her with an unsettling combination of apprehension and determination. A stranger now stood on the threshold of her carefully constructed sanctuary, and she wasn't sure if she could afford the risk of opening that door. What if this is someone looking for trouble, she thought, recalling the half-forgotten news segment about crime rising in their neighborhood. Yet the sheer weight of Jake's situation loomed larger than any fear a knock might bring. Her instinct screamed at her to protect him. The churning storm mirrored the turmoil in her mind, both chaotic and electrifying. She stepped back from the door, taking a breath to gather her thoughts. Would she allow another layer of complication into their lives, or could this moment be leveraged to further solidify their fragile alliance, to reinforce their decision to stand together, whatever the world might throw at them? "Let's go back to planning," she whispered to Jake, who watched her with an intensity that cemented her resolve, yet he seemed just as concerned. "Emily, maybe you should take a look, if it's someone looking for you or Lucy." "No," she replied, her mind racing. "We can't show fear, and we can't let this moment derail us. We're standing on the edge of a pivotal moment in our lives."
A burning thought flared within her. Perhaps this stranger could be an opportunity, a catalyst that would compel her to embrace her own growth, to become the woman capable of handling whatever chaos life presented. With Herculean strength, she returned to the door, reasoning that understanding her boundaries required exposure to risks. She opened it slowly, allowing the storm's harsh winds to sift through, bending the light that streamed in. Standing before her was a young woman, drenched from the rain, shivering slightly as she tried to catch her breath. Her eyes darted between Emily and the interior of the apartment. "I'm sorry to intrude, "But is there any chance I could take refuge here?" she asked, her voice barely audible above the howling wind. Emily glanced back at Jake, who held her gaze, silently urging her to decide. This wasn't just about safety anymore. It was about knitting together the threads of her own courage. "Come in," she replied, beckoning the woman inside, against every alarm bell ringing in her head. As she stepped into the warmth of the apartment, the woman immediately sensed the tension hanging in the air like a thick fog. "I'm really sorry. I didn't know who else to turn to," she said, wrapping her arms around herself. "My car broke down on the road, and it's really bad out there." Emily nodded, recognizing her own anxiety spilling over at the intrusion, but knowing that compassion couldn't be shut out either. "Let's give you a moment to dry off. We were just about to discuss a plan for—" "Emily," Jake interjected, his brow knitted in worry. "Are you sure this is a good idea? We barely know her." "This is an opportunity, Jake," she said with increasing conviction. She looked back at the stranger. "What's your name?" "Lila," the woman replied, visibly grateful but confused. "Thank you for helping me." Jake's skepticism was palpable, but Emily felt a spark of resolve ignite within her. Lila could bring perspective, possibly even insight into the choices they might face. Instead of apprehensively rolling the dice by shutting out a chance for growth, both for herself and for Jake, she could embrace the moment, discovering something more profound than fear. "Lila, why don't you sit down? I think we could really use your input." The air drew taut with mounting hope as everyone settled. As she set the course, discussing immediate plans, an undercurrent of possibility edged into Emily's heart. She wasn't just facing a storm, she was beginning to slowly unfurl her wings, ready to take on whatever came next. But when the doorbell rang yet again, Emily's resolve intertwined with a fresh dose of anxiety. Their fragile unity, it seemed, was about to be tested once more. What announcement loomed just beyond the threshold? Emily's thoughts raced as she turned toward the door, the echo of the doorbell resonating in her mind like an ominous drumbeat.
Lila sat across the living room, her discomfort palpable, while Jake's tension simmered just beneath the surface. The storm outside clamored for attention, a chaotic reminder of everything they fought against. With purposeful strides, Emily made her way to the door. Each step felt heavy, making her acutely aware of the stakes. What awaited them outside? Could it once again be the harbinger of trouble, or the messenger of change? As she reached for the knob, a moment's hesitation crept in, yet determination surged to the surface, propelling her to act. She pulled the door open, half expecting to confront a sinister figure. Instead, a man promptly stepped forward, his face bruised and grimy, an unsettling look in his wide eyes. "Please," he rasped, his voice barely audible against the storm's roar. "I need help." Instinctively, Emily stepped back. Her mind flashed with images of danger, but her heart beat louder than her fears. "Come in," she found herself saying, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. The man stumbled inside, eyes darting nervously to each corner of the room, sensing the very atmosphere shift in his presence. Emily closed the door swiftly, her gaze flicking back to Jake and Lila. Jake's expression was a mixture of concern and fear. He stepped closer, protectively. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice low but firm. "I'm Nathan," the man said, breathing heavily. I was attacked by someone on the road. It wasn't just a car crash." A chill ran through Emily. Nathan's vulnerability ignited a potent mix of empathy and resolve within her. This was their chance, not just to act, but to truly understand how deep their commitment to each other ran. Jake's gaze remained scrutinizing, protective, cautious instincts flaring, but Emily felt her own strength grow in geometric proportions. "Take a seat, Nathan," she said, gesturing toward the couch. "We can help you, but we need to know what's happening." As he collapsed onto the cushions, Emily crouched before him, fully eyeing his bruised cheek and trembling hands. "I didn't think it had happened so close," Nathan said, looking at her with wide, terrified eyes. "People are getting desperate out there. At first, it was just a robbery, but then I saw something I wasn't supposed to see." Suspicion hung in the air. Emily exchanged a cautious glance with Jake. The reality surrounding them became starkly clearer. Here sat a man entangled in potentially dangerous affairs, putting their own fragile foundation at risk. But Emily felt the tremors of change beneath her skin. "What did you see?" she probed, sensing the deeper implications of Nathan's words. In seeking to uncover the truth, she knew they would either solidify their bond or lay bare the cracks in it. His response tumbled out like a hopeless confession. "A group, planning something. I don't know what, but I saw faces I've seen in the news. That's why I ran."
"I thought they wouldn't follow me." His voice cracked, eyes darting around as if expecting shadows to leap from the corners. Emily leaned in, urging him to go on, her focus sharpening with each word. She wondered if this confrontation with danger could be the crucial turning point, the moment they could no longer dwell in fear, but in fortitude. "Emily, this is getting dangerous," Jake interrupted, his voice tinged with urgency. "We can't take on this risk." Decision loomed over her like a tangible weight. Every instinct warned her against inclusion, against opening themselves up to more chaos. Yet the flicker of promise curated within her, the chance to confront fear head-on, beckoned her. As she weighed the implications, a ping of intuition whispered through her subconscious. What if they could turn this crisis into strength? What if Nathan's plight opened her to capabilities she hadn't fully explored? "I can't hide from this," Emily determinedly stated, her voice unwavering. "This is about more than just us anymore. If there's something out there, we need to confront it, together." With that declaration, the very foundations of her identity were shifting beneath her. She was at the precipice of a life-altering choice, her resolve becoming palpable. Bracing for the ripple effects of this momentous decision, Emily knew she was at a turning point. But as Nathan took a deep, ragged breath to explain further, the sudden crash of thunder broke through. The lights flickered ominously, and in that moment of darkness, Emily sensed that danger wasn't just outside, it was rapidly encroaching upon their sanctuary. What awaited them in the shadows? In the dim light of the flickering bulbs, Emily's heart raced as she confronted the storm of uncertainty surrounding them. Every instinct screamed for caution, yet the urgency of Nathan's predicament ignited an unforeseen fire inside her. She looked at Jake, his body tight with tension, arms crossed protectively over his chest. She could feel the weight of his disapproval as he surveyed Nathan, a man they knew nothing about. "We can't just jump in without knowing the full story," he murmured, his voice strained. "Jake, we have to consider the situation," Emily countered, her voice steadier than she felt. "He's scared. He needs our help. But what if he's putting us in danger?" Jake said, frustration building like the thunder outside. Distracting thoughts wrestled within her. Despite the uncertainty, Emily sensed that her decision now had consequences beyond just aiding a stranger. What lay ahead could either forge their bond or shatter it entirely. "Listen, Nathan," she urged, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper that pulled Jake into their shared focus. "What did you see that made you run? We need the truth." Nathan hesitated, eyes flickering towards Jake before locking onto Emily's searching gaze. "I overheard them talking about plans, things people shouldn't be doing, especially here." "They were serious. Dangerous." His voice wavered. "I thought I could get away in time, but then they chased me. I barely made it out." Tension spread like wildfire in the room. With every word, Emily's resolve solidified. She was no longer just a passive observer of chaos. She had the chance to step into the storm and take charge. Hidden within her was a glimmer of potential waiting to be unleashed. "Then we need to figure out what's going on," she declared, her conviction sharp enough to slice through Jake's skepticism. "If we can understand this threat, maybe we can stop it before it turns worse." Jake's eyes bored into hers, a mixture of fear and admiration swirling within them. Emily understood the whirlwind of emotions behind his concern. They were all pushing into uncertain territory. Yet she clung tighter to her emergent strength, knowing every moment of hesitation could cost them dearly. "All right," Jake relented, although reluctance seasoned his words. "But we do this carefully. We're not going to put ourselves directly in their path without a plan." As Nathan nodded slowly in response, Emily could feel the transformation within her, an awakening she hadn't anticipated. Decisions that used to feel weighty now propelled her forward with a determined grace. With their lives at stake, she felt less like the fearful woman she had been, and more like a strategist envisioning victory. Once the storm had passed, they would confront the outside world together, but right now, the storm surged within her, challenging doubt and fear alike. Thoughts raced. How could they gather intel? Who were these men Nathan had seen? "Okay, Nathan, we need to get some information," she pressed, glancing toward Jake, who seemed increasingly on board. "Can you recall anything about the location where this meeting was? Any identifying features?" Nathan hesitated, his brow furrowing as if searching through a fog of panic. "The cafe, by the old Phelps warehouse. That's where I saw them." The name struck her like a cold splash of water. The warehouse had been the talk of town, an abandoned site now rumored to be used for secretive dealings. An unsettling energy surged through her as she felt the gravity of their situation deepen. Working together, they could transform this fear into an actionable plan. The idea of challenging the status quo electrified her, each mental image of confrontation propelling her forward into the unknown. "Let's go there tonight," Emily said, her voice loud enough for all to hear. Jake shifted, eyes narrowing as he considered her proposition. "You truly believe we should walk into something like this? Alone?" Emily met his gaze, her heart pounding but her spirit unwavering. "If we don't act now, we risk facing something worse."
In that moment, she understood that her life was no longer defined by fear. It was now a canvas waiting for bold strokes of bravery. Each step forward would challenge her personally and professionally, igniting a transformation she never knew she desired. The wind howled outside, as if to warn them of the dangers that awaited. But in her heart, Emily felt the stirrings of newfound courage. She was ready to leap into that darkness. This was a chance to not just confront dangers outside, but also the fears ingrained deep within her. As they gathered their belongings and structured their plan, a piercing thought wove through her mind. What kind of woman would she become through this experience? But before she could ponder further, a thunderous crash echoed through the house, and they all froze, fear gripping them anew. The walls felt as though they were closing in, and the darkness outside only deepened. Was there a treacherous entity looming closer, waiting for the perfect moment to strike? The stakes had never been this high, and neither had Emily's sense of purpose. Little did they know, the storm wasn't the only thing brewing. The true confrontation was on the horizon. Emily's heart drummed loudly in her chest, a persistent reminder that time was slipping away. The thunder had visited them in waves, first a distant rumble, now a direct assault on the stillness of the room. The sudden crash had jolted her senses, igniting an urgency to act. She exchanged glances with Jake and Nathan, each of them processing their shared fear. It was no longer just about Nathan's escape. It was about their survival too. "Let's go," she urged, her voice sharper this time, igniting a spark of determination in her chest. The time for deliberation had passed. Whatever danger lay ahead, she was ready to confront it head-on. They slipped out of the house, their breaths quickened by the cold air slashing against their skin and the ominous night cloaking them. The shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally, each step echoing with the weight of their collective anxiety. Emily felt their fear coiling around her like a tightening noose, but she pushed through, unwilling to let doubt dictate her pace. As they neared the cafe by the old Phelps warehouse, Emily's mind raced with strategic intentions. Could Nathan's information be the key to uncovering the truth, and perhaps a way to uncover more about herself in the process? Each apprehensive breath blended with the anticipation of potential confrontation. "Stay close," she whispered, her heart echoing the urgency in her voice. "Remember, we're looking for information, not a fight." Jake remained vigilant, his eyes scanning the surroundings, while Nathan followed closely behind. Emily led them toward a flickering neon sign, casting an eerie glow on the cracked pavement. The cafe, once a bustling hub of life, now stood dilapidated, its windows opaque with a thick layer of grime that hinted at secrets long kept.
Every step toward the entrance felt like a descent into a cavern of mystery. Inside, the somber ambiance was disturbed only by the low murmurs of gossip and the clinking of mugs. Emily's instinct kicked into high gear. She scanned the room with an analytical eye, searching for the faces that matched Nathan's vague descriptions, those men who had instigated this whole dilemma. Jake's proximity reassured her, even as they edged toward a far table. "Do you see anyone?" he murmured, inching his voice low. "No, not yet," she replied, adjusting her focus on the patrons. Each face was a potential alliance or a threat. Just as she was about to suggest they move closer to a group clustered near the bar, a distinct voice sliced through the chatter, one she recognized from Nathan's recounting. "There's something wrong with the deal," the man said, his bravado masking fear. "If we don't move fast, we'll lose everything." Her pulse quickened at the audacious claim, and a plan snapped into focus. Take mental notes. Every word uttered was a piece of the puzzle to their deeper understanding of the situation. "Let's get closer," Emily whispered, realizing that she had to make the next move, not just as an observer, but as someone capable of extracting crucial insights from dangerous conversations. As they shifted, veiling themselves in shadows while inching closer, adrenaline pulsed in her veins. Each leap of faith she took in the scenario anchored her self-belief deeper. She was no longer the hesitant woman from before. She was morphing into something new, decisive and aware. Jake leaned in, grabbing her attention. "Are we really doing this? Eavesdropping?" The hesitation in his voice echoed hauntingly. "We need to know what they're planning. It's the only way to stay ahead." A mighty crack of thunder rocked the cafe, causing heads to turn momentarily, disrupting their stealth. Then, as if the universe conspired against them, a pair of eyes locked onto Emily's, piercing through the dim light. The fear and recognition in the man's gaze spelled trouble. She felt the balls of tension harden in the pit of her stomach. What were the implications of being discovered now? Their chance to gather intel was teetering on the brink of an actionable opportunity or disaster. The closer they drew to the edge of revelation, the more she felt herself teeter between thrill and dread.
Every equation in her mind simplified to this moment: revelation, danger, and risk. With the man's sudden rush toward her, the ground seemed to shift underfoot. "You shouldn't be here," he warned sharply, leaning in closer, proximity buzzing with threat. "Get out while you still can." The stakes had never soared this high, and as the tension mounted, Emily braced herself, ready to confront the challenge head-on. Would she falter, or was this what she needed to unleash the woman she was meant to become?
Before she could respond, another flash of lightning illuminated the room, catching an emblem pinned to the man's coat, a mark that sealed their future together, marking them all as pawns in a dangerous game yet to unfold. Emily's heart raced, pounding like a distant drum, drowning out the world around her as the man took another menacing step forward. His eyes bore into hers, a mixture of warning and accusation wrapped tightly within the depths of his glare. The emblem on his coat twinkled ominously in the cafe's flickering light, sending jolts of understanding through her mind. This wasn't just a warning, it was a direct challenge to her growing resolve.
Suddenly, her past decisions began to streamline into a singular purpose, each step towards this moment a testament to her growth. She recognized the shimmers of the woman she was evolving into, the woman capable of confronting adversity and unraveling the threads of complexity that had trapped Nathan and threatened their lives. "We have skills. We can gather information, find a solution. We can be more useful than you think." Each claim was a building block to reinforce her resolve, but even as she spoke, doubt crept in. Did she really believe what she was saying? "You're either brave or foolish," he murmured, leaning in, his eyes softening just enough for Emily to see the turmoil beneath his bravado. "If you're still here when the clock strikes midnight, you'll find out what that means." The room felt increasingly charged, every whisper of conversation around them fading into a silence that filled Emily with a sense of impending movement. She squeezed her fists tightly, a determination settling in her bones. Time was running low. She needed to make a choice, to embrace the role fate had thrust upon her. Before she could articulate that decision, a loud crash echoed through the cafe, and the lights flickered violently overhead. The once dim interior exploded into chaos as patrons shifted in confusion and alarm. But for Emily, the energy of the moment sparked a surge of clarity. This was not simply a query about safety, it was a battle for control, of their fates, of information, of their very lives. "Do we take this chance?" she whispered to Jake and Nathan amid the commotion, her voice laced with urgency. Jake nodded, his jaw set in determination. Nathan, shaking off his uncertainty, met Emily's gaze and flickered a grin. A silent pact of solidarity formed in that instant. In that moment of decision, her earlier fears dulled, replaced with a brightness of possibility. Whatever lay ahead, she now understood her power. The woman she was becoming wasn't just a participant in events beyond her control. She was an active force, ready to shape her destiny. As they moved together, pushing past the uncertainty and into the fray, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of an imminent revelation awaiting them. What would be unveiled when the storm finally settled? Emily propelled herself through the chaos, adrenaline coursing through her veins like wildfire. The loud crash had shattered the atmosphere of quiet menace into one of palpable alarm. She could feel her heart racing faster than ever, each beat echoing her resolve. No longer just a participant in her own life, she was ready to seize the steering wheel. Her destiny was hers to claim. The remains of shattered glass scattered across the floor reflected fragments of the flickering lights, each shard a reminder of her former hesitations. She adjusted her posture, standing firm amid the shifting crowd. "Stay close,"
Emily urged Jake and Nathan, her voice cutting through the disjointed murmurs as they moved toward the exit, her senses sharp and attuned to the surroundings. As they stepped into the outside world, the streetlights cast long shadows, stretching like fingers reaching out for understanding in the dimness. "We need to regroup, find a place where we can talk things through," she stated with a newfound decisiveness. She wasn't willing to let the fear that gripped those around her dictate their actions. This was the turning point, and she refused to let it slip away. While Nathan's brows knitted together in concern, Jake's response defined a steady calm. "I know a place not too far from here. We can hunker down and figure things out." His confidence fueled her determination further, yet something deep within Emily knew it was more than their immediate safety that mattered. It was what they'd learned about themselves in the process.
The trio walked briskly towards the relative sanctuary of a nearby diner, neon lights flickering like a beacon of hope against the stormy night. Each step marked an evolution in Emily, a realization that she could no longer afford to just observe life's narrative. She must carve her own chapters. Inside, they settled into a booth, the clatter of dishes and chatter enveloping them like a comforting shield from the external turmoil. The waitress brought them water, and as Emily took her first sip, she felt her throat tighten. "What was that back there?" she finally whispered, searching her friend's eyes for answers she knew they were all grappling with. "I don't know, but something feels off," Jake said, his brow wrinkled with concern. "That guy, he knew something. The way he looked at you, he saw more than just a challenge." Emily's stomach flipped at the thought. Did he see her potential, her determination, or the fragility that ran deeper than she dared to reveal? "We can't let this intimidate us," she heard herself saying, but a shred of doubt lingered, tugging at her core. "We have the ability to discover what's really happening here." Nathan nodded slowly. "You convinced him to engage at first, but it wasn't enough. We need to outsmart him, figure out how his fear plays into this." Understanding flickered within her like a spark. "I can dig deeper," she said, a strategy taking root in the recesses of her mind. "Let's leverage what we know, contact sources, evaluate everything. He has a weakness, and we can exploit it." That realization invigorated Emily, grounding her. Defiance overpowered her instinct to shy away from confrontation. This was the catalyst for her transformation. Emily no longer wanted just to help. She was poised to take on the mantle of a leader. "What if we turn the tables?" Jake suggested, excitement punctuating his voice. "Absolutely," she affirmed, the gears of planning turning more rapidly within her. "A calculated risk."
We gather everything we can, even leverage his arrogance against him. As if summoned by fate, her phone buzzed on the table, a reminder of the task ahead and the pace necessary to keep ahead of the unknown. The tide was shifting, but Emily felt it swell into something more promising. They were at the intersection of determination and execution. Ambition pulsed through her, illuminating her path. Yet as fervor ignited among them, one nagging question hung unaddressed. Would readiness enough truly prepare them for whatever dark revelations awaited when they turned inwards, exploring the predator lurking beneath the surface of their newly embraced struggle? What truths would they uncover that could either bind them or shatter their resolve? As the diner buzzed around them, Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose as they discussed their plan. No longer merely caught in the undertow of fear, she was now steering the ship toward certainty. "We can't waste time," she said, her voice steady but urgent. "Let's start contacting contacts. We need to position ourselves first." Jake leaned in, a spark of excitement in his eyes. "I might know someone who has insight on the cafe's clientele. I'll reach out." "And I'll see if I can tap into my hospital connections," Nathan added, a growing confidence replacing his earlier hesitation. It was a transformation that signified his commitment to the evolving team. Emily felt a sense of fulfillment swell within her. They were becoming a cohesive force, powerful in their determination to confront the unknown. As they exchanged contact details and potential leads, Emily couldn't help but reflect on her journey. Just days ago, she had felt overwhelmed, drowning amidst the responsibilities of motherhood and her demanding profession. The past few hours, however, had catapulted her into a realm of conviction and action. The vulnerability she had once thought a weakness had become a catalyst for her growth. With each actionable step forward, she embraced her identity as more than just a caretaker. She was a proactive participant in her destiny. "This is our moment. We'll gather intel now, and then when we face them, we'll be ready," Emily emphasized, her vision crystal clear. As they tapped into their networks, Emily felt the thrill of transformation. Hours passed, filled with phone calls, hacking through confusion, and unearthing pieces of a larger puzzle. The challenges that had felt insurmountable just days ago now appeared merely as hurdles waiting to be conquered. Emily saw her life reframing through this lens of agency, the dual roles of mother and nurse merging seamlessly into one potent identity. The time finally came for their confrontation. Armed with information, their next steps were pivotal. The trio gathered, sharing newfound intel in the dim light of the diner. Jake stood with renewed fire in his eyes. "They're certainly connected to something bigger, criminal activity linked to drug trafficking."
"Those men at the cafe are organizing buyers for their next deal." Nathan's voice quivered with determination, "and they plan to do it soon. If we don't act, someone will get hurt." That urgency rippled through Emily, heightening her focus. Stepping into her role meant assuming both leadership and responsibility. "We find their meeting place, stealthily infiltrate and gather evidence," she outlined, her heart now racing with anticipation instead of fear. "We'll become the hunters rather than the hunted." With each deliberate decision she made, her confidence solidified. Gone was the woman who feared she had to toe a line between care and courage. She found a way to incorporate both into her identity. As they prepared to confront the looming challenge, Emily reflected on how far she had come. The duality of her life was no longer a tether binding her to passivity, but an engine propelling her forward. She could nurture her daughter's dreams while taking charge of her own. When they arrived at the abandoned warehouse that night, a shadowy silhouette against the backdrop of a turbulent sky, she felt the weight of the moment settling around them. The air crackled with anticipation. They had faced fears, learned from their vulnerabilities, and risen as a united front. She turned to Jake and Nathan, their shared resolve pulsing like a beacon in the darkness. "Tonight, we confront our fears and bring to light the truths hidden in shadows," she declared, a surge of warmth enveloping her heart as they nodded in agreement. As they crept into the building steps, Emily took a moment to absorb the journey that had brought her here. She had not only rescued a stranger, but had begun a journey of self-discovery that transcended barriers she once believed were insurmountable. Each step forward was laced with purpose, illuminating paths she had never dared to tread before. When the confrontation emerged, Emily felt the tension fall away, replaced by clarity. They exposed the web of deceit behind the desperate chance. As dawn broke, the truth of the night's revelations unfolded, illuminating her path to empowerment. She had embraced the duality of motherhood and ambition. The woman she had become was one of courage, strength, and resolution. As the dust settled post-confrontation, their unity became undeniable, affirming Emily's newfound identity shaped by purpose and authenticity. She could now stand firm between her roles, fiercely defining her future. With the storm behind them, Emily took one last look at the horizon. The light that broke through signified more than a new day. It was the culmination of her journey. For the first time in a long while, she felt a profound sense of achievement and solid confidence. She was no longer just a nurse or a mother. She was a woman who had conquered her own fears and borne witness to the transformative power of her choices. Standing tall, she whispered, "We did this together," as Jake and Nathan shared in her triumph, recognizing the pathways carved anew, forever changed. Subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will captivate and inspire you. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm and spread the journey of resilience. Comment below your thoughts and reactions. Share your theories about this impactful ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. It's time to spread the message of strength and transformation.